So I'm so glad to um, have met my guest today. This is Dr. Carmen Smith, and I've worked in the trauma field for years, and I'm an online therapist currently. But I'm always learning and always open to find out what can help people that have experienced trauma. And so when I was in Sedona, I stumbled upon this flyer, and it was basically a flyer saying Sedona International City of Peace was having a human library event. And I've never been to anything like this, and I certainly didn't know what it was. And so I was very intrigued because the intention behind it was to bring awareness to stereotypes and prejudices that we all have, and also bring into our awareness that we don't have to have them. All we need is a good conversation and a good meeting of people so that we don't prejudge and don't rely on stereotypes to tell us who people are. And so at this human library event, it was put on by the organization of the City of Peace, and Sedona is an international city of peace that the United Nations has appointed as a city of peace, and there's a lot of events surrounding that. And so I went to this event, and on the table were several cards that you could choose from. And these cards were um, uh, people that have experienced abuse, a gay man with HIV, someone with body dysmorphism. And so there were all of these different cards on the table, and you just picked a card, and then you went to that table inside where that person would share their story, and then at the end of their story, the people that are attending could ask questions. So there was a Q&A afterwards, so that by the end of the session, which was probably an hour long, you shouldn't have any prejudices, you shouldn't have any stereotypes. You're actually being educated by a person. You're actually in the vicinity of a person, and you can ask questions, so they become really a part of you as soon as you experience a person in that way. And so that's how I met my guest. My guest is Athena Sophia Montanari, and she was at the table, and I picked the word abuse. And so for an hour, I listened to her story, and it was so enlightening. I was so moved. At one point, I teared up. I'm pretty sure I was crying. There were other people that had teared up because we were right there with you as you were
Uh-huh.
sharing your story
Yes.
emotionally. And so, one of the things that I was blown away by is that as you were telling your story of abuse and childhood abuse and adulthood abuse, that you were also saying the healing. Well, the healing was obvious because you were telling the story in such a beautiful way, but you were making connections about trauma that I don't think I had made, and I wanted to talk to you about that today. So, welcome, my guest,
Uh,
Athena. Thank
thank
you
you.
so much.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Um, I really, I'm happy to be here. And since the day that I met you, I felt the passion that you have about this topic. And thank you for the work that you do. Yeah, it's in supporting the community and making this place a safer place for everybody. Yeah, and yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for
And
joining me. Um,
yeah,
I wanted to start with a question about abuse. And can you tell us, like, I work with people that may have been abused when they were children and now they're adults, and they haven't made the connection that their relationship difficulties or their work difficulties can be directly tied to some unprocessed emotional things that had happened in the abuse. Can you speak to that directly? Did you have that experience also where you thought that the abuse happened years ago? Why is this happening to me now? And how did
Oh,
you deal with that?
okay, that's a very good question. And before I answer it, I wanted to let people know that the way that I see a trauma, a childhood trauma, I don't see it as a pathology. I see it as opportunity to grow and to really transform our life. Even though when you are experiencing, it doesn't look like you are far from appreciating trauma as an opportunity. So because I experienced it since I was little, and I also transform it and resolve it. So I'm aware of I can share the both sides of the same coin. When I was feeling as a victim, and the opposite, the healing aspect of trauma. So you know what happened with trauma or abuse or any kind of circumstances, how I can explain it to people is and there is now some studies done that epigenetics or transgenerational trauma that they call it. Also, it's another aspect of the same thing. You know, with epigenetics, what they're seeing is that even when the trauma happened generation before, it doesn't mean like maybe 100 years ago, that that trauma, it goes passed down into the next generation. It's like a chemical tag that goes on top of your DNA. It doesn't change your DNA, but it affects the way that we respond to the environment. So, so sometimes it doesn't, you know, that trauma and the symptom that we are experiencing right now maybe didn't happen to us directly, but could be from way before. That's one perspective. And another perspective, of course, is I was mentioning that transgenerational trauma that is coming. We can see it as the collective consciousness that, you know, that that planet, that world in history, it's about full of trauma, abuse, and disappointments, and regardless of that, we are here. We are surviving. We survive. You know, this is that we're the life proof that we made it through. So when I'm talking about the collective consciousness, think about it like this is something that we are born into. It's a force that is above us and is driving us. Includes our culture, the educational systems, the family dynamics, or the beliefs, traditions, and all of that is we just is that we inherit those. You know, all of that is our. So we sometimes we are acting upon things that is not really us, doesn't belong to us. Our parents didn't create it. The parents of our parents didn't create it either. So going back to your question again, so I just wanted to give you like a general another perspective of how I came to understand trauma too. Is it because to let people know a little bit about me, I'm coming from the way that I approach trauma, or you know, any trauma-based symptoms. We can see it through our especially through our relationships, whether family, romantic, workplace relationship, or even at the personal level, how we relate to ourselves. So I wanna go back to your question. So because it's a very complex topic. As a human beings, we are very complex. So I realized that it was so kind of impossible really find resolution to our trauma, to our suffering, if we wanna just to approach it from one angle. So it's not only a mental situation, is physiological, involves our body, involves our emotion, our mental body, and also our soul or higher aspects of ourselves. So what happened with trauma, when we experience trauma, is that we experience an arousal. Our nervous system get into this position rather because we experience danger. Danger is very like when is trauma is done when we are a child, or no matter what that age, regardless of our age, there is we can say that the abuse or trauma disappointment has two categories. Is one that is no matter who you are or your background, that that is an event that is gonna be traumatized regardless. For example, wars or the Holocaust or things like that, but or natural disasters. But then is another category on trauma that is more subjective. So depend on that person that for some of us that may be traumatic, and for other people it's not gonna be trauma at all. So that's how we subjectively perceive the event. So what happened with trauma is that our nervous system got charged to that point. Because if I wanna talk about childhood trauma, that is the point that we are trying to make here, is that because we are a small, and our parents or parental figures, they represent our gods. We depend our survival to them. They are bigger, we are little. So there is a monsters or gods like that we are not able to fight. We are not able to speak out because our rational mind is not quite developed yet. We are not able to run away. So but the fear and the charge nervous system is active. It's like you are in that mode or, fight or, flight. And in most of that case, when depending your age, what happens is that energy, which is very powerful because come from your body, your survival instinct. You can imagine that the power that this energy is like when you see it in nature, like for example, lion when he wants to hunt, and this is it's a powerful energy, and the same we share with them. It's like this is our vitality. So that energy gets built up, but because the circumstances, we couldn't release it. We couldn't defend ourselves. We couldn't talk back. We couldn't fight. So what happened? What happened with that intense energy? Got get there stuck, and it's quite alive. It's quite alive. It's not dead. It's like imagine that. you press the gas pedal all the way down, you push it, and at the same time you have to press the brake pedal. So
Mm.
it's like it's you are static, but it's like it's alive, it's stuck, it's tied up. So it's like it stands up with like this, but that energy can get stored in your body wherever in the mind. But we have to understand that when I'm talking about our mind, the mind is not local. It is some people use mind and brain as the same, like interchangeable, but no, brain is between our ears, it's here, but mind is non-local. I'm talking about our energetic magnetic field. So it can get stored anywhere, or here, or it's non-local, or and so
Let me just stop you there because you're there's a lot of information to unpack in what you've said, but what you're saying is that we're talking about when a person is a child, when something happens that their fear is activated, they go into fight, flight, or freeze. And what you're saying is that they freeze because they can't run away and they can't fight back. They don't have the vocabulary, and they're afraid of physical fight. So you freeze, and what you're saying is that energy is frozen not just in your mind but in your body.
yeah, because the mind is non-local.
The mind is not local. Yes.
Non-local, yeah.
Okay. And for some reason, I'm envisioning chakras because those are like the energy centers that you hear so much about in your body. So, what you're saying is that you're kind of frozen at an unempowered place in your energy field,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
and I just wanted to add another, response because you mentioned that the fight, the if fight, flee, and frozen. But
Uh-huh.
there is another another response too that usually we do when we're is like a submit, you accommodate,
Okay.
you is like you become the servant to that goddess and god. Is another like you can freeze and get paralyzed, but also there is another when you are like you kind of like become submissive to that to those goddess, like you don't want to provoke their anger. So that is another response. And usually when we respond to fear that way is when we are creating codependency relationship.
Mm.
Is when when we do, and that's when my when I was that was my response to my fear. And so it's normal that when I started created I got meet my former husband, it was a totally codependency relationship because it was my trauma, my trauma response. So that's so yeah, so going back to the same about that trauma, so that trauma, that energy got frozen in the symptom. The symptom can be, it can be fear, can be anxiety, can be a sadness, can be even physical pain. It has by the time it has it grows so apart that it's difficult to find a connection between that event and your present symptoms. It's totally, they grow so apart that depending where you experience the trauma, when you are adult, you don't see that connection. It's like
You
a
know,
white and black.
yeah, that's very I think that's going to be mind blowing to a lot of people because they don't make the connection, like we were talking about, to past trauma or the trauma that they've experienced in the culture or through epigenetics. There's so many different kinds of categories of trauma that we all experience, and their physical symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Now, now I remember, I made the connection years ago that when I see someone that is really debilitated almost and they're in the grocery store, I wonder what I say to myself, I wonder what kinds of trauma they've experienced. I
Mm-hmm.
just automatically go there and my heart just aches and I just send a prayer to them. But people need to know that this energy can go to different parts of the body and can go
Yeah.
to different emotional centers and everything, and that there's a connection to this trauma that we all, like you said, it's a complex thing. It's not just one thing in your childhood or that we think about. It is the culture, it is how we're raised, it's what our families experienced, it's what generations before us have experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to clarify something because I wanted to demystify, some situation that I have seen more often. And, first, I don't want people to get the impression that there is here are the traumatized population, and on this side we have the unicorn people that so I can tell you that everybody we know we are all in the same mess. We are in this together. And I believe that right now people is talking more about it is that people that I decided to own and do something about what's going on in their life. Other people, they are not at that level. And as I said, it's impossible, pretty much impossible. Like if you have a body, if you have a physical body, it's like you are free or any disappointment or trauma. Regardless of, maybe you could say that you have your parents were perfectly healthy and emotional and mature, even though you might have that. But at school, teachers, culture, and movies, all that stuff is for one's point is like you might be, or even your classmates. It's impossible that you didn't experience, as I said again before. Trauma, trauma on one side is very subjective. So in your case, you are little, and for you that's trauma. Yeah, it's gonna create a frozen energy there in your mind. It's gonna stay there. And from another perspective, just because we have a physical body and we are alive, if we think about transgenerational trauma, yes, we inherit that. And even though it's impossible that even we might have or we think like our parents were the healthy, mature individual, is that we inherit that. It's impossible, like they can have put us in a bubble and protect us from everything, from what's going on there. Like we're gonna get affected, we're gonna absorb it, it's gonna be going through our energy field. And if you think about, also, if I coming from another situation, from epigenetics, especially right now that I'm really doing a lot of family constellation, is one of the techniques that I use with people. So uh, I'm accessing like conscious part of the conscious unconscious mind of the people. I don't know what is gonna show up in our session, but what I can tell you that sometimes it comes from maybe 2 or 3 generations back, and they didn't have an idea. It's affecting the life right now, this moment. It because if we go back to quantum field and took some of the elements, there is no space. Everything is happening right now. So what I notice is when I doing those constellations, the healing and the resolution is happening at that moment. It's like a live. It's happening. You can see it. You can see how it is coming. It's fine. You can see how it resolves. So it doesn't matter. It happened 100 years ago or happened maybe last year.
Well, that's amazing. Can you walk us through like an example of that, like so we can get a visual or a sense of how that healing, or would you call it healing? What is that you just said?
I call it resolution. A
Resolution.
resolution to, it is because the more I do this at the beginning, um, you think like you are alone. You are a very unique case, and your family is all fucked up, and everybody else is having the perfect, family dynamics. And the more I do this, is I said that the stories might is totally different, but underneath that, the trauma and the feelings and the same shame, guilt, and suffering is the same. Is the same in everybody else.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, those are the things that affect more people. The shame, the guilt, suffering, the not feeling loved, um, the sense of undeserving. Those is like everybody is experiencing that. What happening is, as I tell had I my protocol, like using that. I use more because my modality, I cross, use different techniques at the same time. I'm I blend my background in psychology. I blend it with some more esoteric methodologies, and I combine them, and it's cross cultural.
yeah.
And what I'm doing with my protocol with a family constellation. Of course, now I created something that was inspired by a friend that I call pet constellation, but I don't want to go into that. But and so I ask the client what's that come that they want to have, the resolution that they want to have. Is only one aspect. Even though we might have many issues and we want to resolve everything at once, I just prefer just focus on one, because when we resolve one, because we are connected, we are resolving other areas at the same time. So only one. And secondly, I protect the privacy of the client, because this is done in a group, can be done one on one session, but sometimes it's better it's done in a group. But even though it's done in a group, the rest of the attendants, they don't know what is the issue. Is the client feel comfortable to share, is she or he can are free to do it, but it has to come from them, not from me. And if they wanna save their identity, they don't wanna say, "Oh, I'm that working client." It's okay too. So I don't have to say, "Oh, this or he or she the client is." I respect whatever he or she wants to do. I respect that. It's
Mm-hmm.
and then what is kind of like a role playing, I choose a representative who is gonna represent that client that I'm working on that day. So the idea is that I don't use the same clients to represent themselves, because we have too many filters. We're blind to. So if they want to find resolution, and I use them as I use them, they want, because we are blinded. I can see, it's easy for me to see the issues on others, but I'm not able to see mine. It's like someone can tell me, oh, I can tell you what's wrong with you, this, but I don't see it on me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So so that's the reason behind that I choose a representative for my client, because that representative, he has filters regarding their own family dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have filters regarding that client's family dynamics. So they can see things that the client won't be able to see. So I choose that representative, and then according to what the outcomes, I start using the other attendants to represent other aspects of that client that I'm working with. And because none of them have filters, and they're picking up on, as I said before, like we have all this trauma stored in our mind, meaning they are non-local. So the other, I create that space where all that, and of course I just put my hands on each of the attendees that they're gonna be playing a role, and I sharing what's the outcome, but not verbally though, just mentally. It's another level that I'm sharing, that no, I'm not expressing anything verbally, but it's more mentally. So they start picking up things that the client is not aware, and they can express it freely with no fears or anything.
So what you're
Yeah.
saying is that this is done in a group.
Yes.
So the group doesn't have to necessarily know each other. It's not like a family unit. This is a group, and everyone in the group is dealing with their own issues, but they come together to help the client, the particular person that you're working with that day, to help them get resolution.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
really great way of doing that type of treatment.
Yeah, so and the thing about it is that I'm very tuned in with what's going on. So every session is different. Every session is a I don't because I don't have any expectation. But what even when no one, pretty much most of the people, they're strangers, they haven't met before. There like everything that shows in that moment is somehow is related. And sometimes people, they, because it didn't necessarily have to happen in their lifetime, could happen before. Maybe it was something, a taboo, something, a secret kept in the family, and they weren't even aware of that. But voila, it's showing up there. Sometimes it's mind blowing. Like I'm not even know what it's gonna show there, because I had to go with the flow,
Yes.
manage how things are unfolding. But that is I can see a lot of changes at that level in people's life, because through my healing process, my personal healing process, I I was aware that when we are able to face and to acknowledge our wounds, is when we resolve it. Before I was afraid of facing. I and even though I had a master in psychology, I couldn't face it, and I totally understand it now, because with every aspect that every trauma, every is not even building up. It's like we are losing part of ourselves. We are disconnected. Our emotions are disconnected from our body. Our thoughts are disconnected from our emotions. The body is disconnected from the mental body. So we are fragmented. So even though here this aspect has the education, like educational degree in the area, it was totally disconnected from everything else. So that that trauma does to us is we get fragmented. So in
Mhm.
reality, the goal of therapy or any personal work that we do is to bring back bring back, come back into our body, bring back all the parts, and come to. My goal is not to is not to change the past, because we are not able to change it, but it's more like come to terms with it, and accept, is accept ourselves.
Mhm.
That's a basic goal to, um because every time that we resolve one aspect, we find resolution at trauma, that energy that was frozen there in time, it doesn't matter, it can be for years, that energy gets liberated and comes back to us. So it's when we experience this expansion of consciousness and wisdom, because um, what happened is like the knowledge, the knowing, the wisdom, the love, and everything is already here. It's not anywhere. However, trauma and all that suffering and disappointment, they create like a wall between us, and we're not able to see it. But
Mhm.
when we resolve that, it's like oh, I have access to that. I have, free access to all
Um,
that knowing.
yes, yes, I like the way you describe that. I have an example of the fragmented self that you were talking about, where your mind is disconnected from your emotions and your body is disconnected from something else. Where I have a client that is, we may do talk therapy, and I may ask her to do journaling or to go deeper onto a subject. And it seems like there's a block there where talk therapy can only go so far. And this is a very intelligent person. But when we begin to talk about feelings, or when we begin to, uh, find out what the pattern is and her pattern and her thought process, it's like she hits a brick wall where she can't go to that place. And that is an example to me of where she has been fragmented and the pieces are still separate.
Yeah, talk therapy doesn't work. I mean, and I'm not saying that it doesn't have
I
value, because
agree. I agree.
I have my degree in psychology, and it is that I began that, but that's not enough.
It's not a.
And that's the reason that I wanted to come from a more holistic place, a multimodal, like and cross cultures, like combine different techniques, like what I was saying, that family constellation is one of the techniques that I use, but also in addition to that, I also use I provide the people easy and simple but very effective techniques for them to be self-regulated, be able to control their emotions and don't let them um, govern you, or take the best of you with your emotions. So I also coming from that perspective, and then meditation, that also beneficial, but those for me are for more like a supportive techniques, like we have Reiki or energy healing or meditation, or that they're valuable, but for supporting your personal transformation, your personal healing, but they don't really heal us. And that's one of the reasons why you might go to have a a fabulous Reiki energy session, or your sound bath, or you might go to this meditation practice, and then after you are done, like 2 3 days after, you go back to you start feeling again the same, because they of course they're valid as a support us, but they don't heal us, uh, they don't cure us, sort of speaking, because trauma is a very complex event, and nothing that is cosmetic is gonna help us. It can be cosmetic, and if you are just doing a like putting down like this is very sometimes is I have to tell people, just to validate their experience, because many people, they don't allow themselves to face their uncomfortable emotions,
Hmm.
and they start putting down notes like I'm happy, oh I'm happy, trying to be positive, and inside it like I'll writing those notes like positive thinking and all that kind of stuff, and you know what, it's not gonna work, because it's something that is coming like a mental, it's coming like a you are forcing. And I have, especially here like right now I'm in Sedona, especially what I have noticed here, people that they're more into, oh you have to be positive, positive, positive all the time. Sometimes you can see that they are in pain.
Mm.
One time I asked this person, like I saw clearly like she was on pain, and I said, oh what's wrong with your arm? And she said, oh I don't want to talk about it, because I'm going to give it more power to my pain. And or when they're sad or angry, they I have to be positive, I can't go to that uncomfortable feelings. So and especially like when I was going through my process, people saying, oh you know what, you are just, it's your energy, you are so negative that you are calling that experience into your life, you are attracting that experience into your life. And that is misleading people, that is not being nice to people. And I'm not saying that being positive is not beneficial, I'm not saying that.
Hmm.
What I'm saying is, you are taking that into extremes, because of that you are trying to deny your real feelings. It's not helping you, it's not helping us, it doesn't help us.
So, one of the things that you would recommend that is helpful is going into that emotion that you've been avoiding, but you have to do it in a safe environment.
Yes, you know what? Yeah, exactly. When you feel safe, and because I would I don't know. This is a our healing is very personal. is something unique for every person. So what I'm doing here is just sharing my how I experienced it and my personal uh, path that it took me through all these experiences. And that's what I'm trying to do, share this, and it's people, oh, they can find something useful, good, they can take it, or if not, they can leave it, it's fine. I'm not saying that I'm holding that truth or my way is the only way. So what I'm saying is that in my personal case is when we are allowed to really face our demons, is when we begin our healing. It's like the Dante allegory. Before he could go up to the top of the summit, he went down to hell, meaning that we have to take a detour and make peace with our past, with our shadow, acknowledge that, and then we can start uh, really feel grateful, um, happy, and be content. And what I'm trying to share with people is to validate their emotions, to validate their experiences. There is nothing wrong with them. They haven't done anything wrong. We haven't done anything wrong. And even though right now it's difficult because I don't know at what the um, level they are at right now, even our parents and the parents of our parents, is that everybody had played a role of victim and victimizer.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in
Yes.
some way or another way. And our parents didn't create the mess, they were the result of too, and their parents either. So we come from that perspective, and of course depending the level of you are, if you grieving, I'm not expecting you to say, oh, to see past generation with compassion. I don't expect you to do it, because there was a time that I was full of rage, self-loathing, that believe me, I if I could have a atomic bomb and explode it and destroy the entire planet, it's like I would have done it. Yeah. So it's part, and I just wanna validate people's
Mm-hmm.
experience, and you are unique and your experience is totally different. One person is totally different than another one, and the whatever is happening in your life right now is the way to be happening. It's that way, it's the right way for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we want to, as therapists, always remind people that trauma is an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
And when you're on the other side of it, um, like for years, I would have the victim mentality, and so whether I was at work, I was a victim. Somebody was doing something to me or to undermine me or talking behind my back. There was always something. And then my relationship, when that failed, I'm always the victim. So at some point in my evolution, and we're still evolving, you come to the point of some type of revelation, that I am powerful beyond measure. So I can no longer feed into that narrative of being a victim. So if I'm powerful and I really begin to really take that in and really begin to be that powerful, the victim story is no longer useful. It is no. It is
Uh-huh.
actually, you actually see the powerlessness of it. So you drop it, then you take on the power, uh, goddess, whatever you want to say, energy, which was there all the time, that you're just reactivating. So when people say you're broken, you're not broken. You always have that power. It's like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. You always had the power to go home. But at some point, you have to reach a point where divine intervention, whatever it is for people, to drop that story, to see the falsity, the illusion in that story, and how the whole culture wants us to, the whole culture, society, whatever, wants us to feel victimized. And when you step out of that, you really go to a different dimension. You go to a different level. And you can call it healing, you can call it resurrection, resolution. Something happens where we step into our power.
Yeah,
And that's the amazing part. That's why we're therapists. That's why we're here. Not just
yeah.
therapists, but that's why we're living examples of
Yeah,
that.
and that's a great point, because absolutely healing is a very personal choice, and you really start healing. You can't really heal yourself from a immature perspective. Require you to be mature and own everything, own your emotions, own your behavior. So absolutely is when you were saying about a victimhood a narrative. Yes, it's like to start healing, we have to grow up, and we heal as adults. We can't heal as a child. We only can heal as adult, taking ownership of our own things. Yeah, and taking the steps necessary to heal. Otherwise, as you say, the victimhood narrative just keep us in the same cycle, just over and over and over, until we get so sick that we can't really stomach it. So it went okay. Then it when we start healing as adults. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly what you were saying is, and some people they are not uh, there yet. They need a little bit of more suffering and pain, because that's us. Like when we can take it anymore, well, okay. It's like we started doing what we knew already that, yeah, we needed to start doing to help us.
That's, yeah, that's very true. So we need to get to a point where, we've suffered enough, and
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
and I feel for people, I do. My
yeah,
heart goes out to people that are suffering, with that. And, and I always tell people that we need to be an example, and there needs to be more examples. So I'm always aware that, you go through your life, you don't know who's looking, who's observing, but when you get to a point where you no longer are with the victim story, you are a light. And that's in the Bible too, that we're a light, and we shine for the way for other people. So I'm always talking about some of the traumatic things that have happened in my life, but I do it in the context of I'm not there. I'm not still in that
hmm,
mindset.
yeah,
I'm not going to tell you a victim story. I'm going to tell you this story to show you that there's another way of looking at that story. So my story
uh-huh.
changed.
Yeah, that's a great point, because um, it's not like you're gonna have amnesia and forget that story. Even though the memory, the story is there, but it doesn't have that same intensity. It doesn't have any emotional charge, and it's really meaningful. That story lost its power. It lost its meaning, and it just a representation that it doesn't have any value. The only value that the story has is to share with people, like you're sharing a tale, but you don't relate to that. You don't identify to that anymore.
That's
So
right.
you are able to share to share with other people, and say, we go through this. We all go through this. A this is being a human. This is about being alive, and it happened to many of us.
Hmm.
It's life. It's just life. Is the normal life flow, and you notice I have a hear about everything. Yeah, for me, I see it as, when I working with a client, um, I don't have any prejudice. I'm not judging anybody. I don't. I'm coming from more compassion, understanding perspective, and knowing and feeling everything that they are going through because I experience it. So it's not the same coming from intellectual or concept, like you read it on a book, you memorize it, but when you go through the whole experience, and then you resolve it, and find resolution to it, is take to a deeper level everything than knowing the knowledge and everything. And plus, that's the reason that I easily can see how I can see how people is experiencing, or understanding how they're going through their personal healing too.
Yes, and your medicine of compassion and empathy and a certain amount of nurturing. That's that feminine divine energy, which is so healing. And that mother energy saying, come home to your
Uh-huh.
true self, your authentic self.
Yeah, I know. It's uh uh yeah, that's yeah, thank you for saying that, because it's about validate validate the person
Yes,
experience it, to validate their emotions,
yes,
to validate even their thoughts, and everything that they're going through,
yes,
because
yes.
we have been unseen. We have been, rejected, and even for our having different perspectives, having for our feelings and emotions, that it's about to change that. It's about to provide something that we didn't receive before.
That's right. That's right. Wow, that's powerful. Um, is there, as we wind down, I just am so elated that you are healing, you are a healer. And because you had those situations happen in your past, you had the opportunity to step into a realm of healing that is very unique. It's uniquely your own because you have taken different modalities and ancient ones, um, spiritual, all of that, and the structure of psychology, and molded it into such a wonderful concept. Are you writing a book about this? Are we going to read about this concept or anything like that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I already published two books. Okay, if I can
Yes,
show.
please.
This is the it's a trilogy, and this is the first. I don't know
Oops,
if
I
you can
can't see
see.
it. I think it's covered up. Let's see. Can it get closer? What's the name of it?
This is called the first one. This is the first, and it's called Unhealthy Attachments.
A healthy
The
attachment.
the woman that couldn't say no.
Ooh, I love that. I love that.
and and the second one is called Lotus. That's the second part is called Lotus Flower,
Lotus flower.
a roadmap of a personal transformation.
A roadmap for personal transformation. And is that on,
Uh-huh.
are both of those on Amazon?
Uh-huh, yes. And then the last one, the last part of the trilogy is coming up. I'm hoping by the end of this year it's gonna be, yeah, available.
And,
It's called the Emotional Alchemist.
ooh, I love that.
uh,
Emotional Alchemist.
yes, I believe that it's gonna be the subtitle is gonna be a new life philosophy.
Ooh,
Yeah, so
wonderful.
that's yeah, it's coming up by the end of this year, hopefully. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So
wonderful. So if people want to find out more, they can just go to Amazon and type in your name probably, and your books will come up. Or,
uh-huh,
um,
yeah.
yeah, so that's phenomenal that you're able to get that wisdom out there to the public.
No, thank you for doing what you are doing, and this was wonderful. I'm happy to share my experience with everybody and anyone that can find any benefit from them.
Yes, thank you. And as we're going through this time on our planet, there are many people that are wanting, maybe they've gotten to that part of suffering where they're wanting help. And it's really great to know that you're out there, you've put your books out there, and that there are people out here that have been through some events that people will call traumatizing, but they're actually opportunities for growth,
Yeah,
opportunities to come up brighter on this planet.
yes. If you is you are able to meet your challenges, of
Yeah,
course, become is yeah. If you are willing to meet the challenges, absolutely is that great opportunity to personal growth and expansion. Yeah.
expansion. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And we'll
No, you're
definitely
very
have to get
welcome.
together and talk more. Thank you for
Yeah,
joining me. Okay.
absolutely.